Syria, an ancient land of cities older than history, crossroads of civilizations, home to poets, traders, farmers, and dreamers. And yet, in the 21st century, Syria became one of the most devastated places on earth. Entire cities reduced to rubble, millions displaced, a generation lost between borders. In this film, we explore a difficult question. How did global powers, especially the United States and Russia, shape the war in Syria? And why, despite predictions of his collapse, Bashar al-Assad did not fall? To understand the war, we begin before it began. For decades, Syria was ruled by the Assad family. First Hafez al-Assad, then his son Bashar. Their system combined authoritarian control, intelligence services, and tight grip over political life. Opposition was restricted. Elections lacked real competition. Critics were monitored, arrested, or silenced. Yet life in Syria was not only repression, there was also normality. Markets bustled. Families built homes. Students studied. The country was diverse: Arab, Kurdish, Christian, Druze, Alawite, Sunni, and more, living side by side under a fragile state-controlled stability. But this stability rested on fear. The 2000s brought economic inequality, unemployment, drought, and frustration. Young people felt blocked, educated but without opportunity. Prices rose while wages stagnated. Corruption spread through business networks tied to the regime. Syria was like dry wood. It only needed a spark. That spark came in 2011, when protests swept across the Arab world. Tunisians, Egyptians, Libyans, Bahrainis, Yemenis, and Syrians went to the streets demanding dignity, jobs, and political freedom. In Syria, protests began peacefully in Daraa, sparked by the arrest and torture of schoolboys who had written anti-government graffiti. The message was simple: we want freedom. Security forces responded with force. Bullets, beatings, mass arrests. Funerals became protests. Protests became larger funerals. A cycle had begun: anger, repression, more anger. What began as peaceful demonstrations evolved into armed conflict. Not because Syrians woke up one day wanting war, but because the state's violent crackdown convinced many that peaceful protest would not bring change. Some soldiers defected, forming the Free Syrian Army. Arms flowed in from regional powers. Local militias formed, sometimes to protect neighborhoods, sometimes to seize power. Soon, Syria was no longer one conflict. It was many wars layered upon each other. Government versus opposition. Rebels versus rebels. Jihadist groups versus almost everyone. Regional and global powers fighting proxy struggles. The country fractured. The role of the United States was complicated, not the simple story of a single plan to destroy Syria, but a shifting policy responding to events. At first, Washington condemned Assad's crackdown and imposed sanctions. Then came two key turning points: chemical weapons attacks and the Red Line debate. The rise of ISIS. The Obama administration considered strikes against Assad after chemical attacks but ultimately chose diplomacy, pushing for chemical disarmament agreements rather than full-scale war. However, the rise of ISIS changed everything. ISIS seized territory from Syria to Iraq, declared a caliphate, and broadcast extreme violence worldwide. The United States shifted focus primarily to defeating ISIS, launching airstrikes in Syria and supporting Kurdish and Arab partners, especially the Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF. The U.S. did not directly invade Syria to overthrow Assad, but carried out thousands of airstrikes, funded, trained, or equipped some opposition groups, controlled territory in northeastern Syria through partners, imposed sweeping economic sanctions. These actions reshaped Syria's map, economy, and future. Even without a direct regime change invasion, if the United States shaped the conflict, Russia changed its course. By 2015, Assad's forces were losing ground. Rebel groups surrounded key areas. Many analysts predicted the regime would fall. Then Russia intervened militarily. Moscow launched an air campaign in support of Assad, alongside Iran-backed militias and Hezbollah. Russian aircraft targeted rebel strongholds, supply routes, and urban districts. This intervention, reversed Assad's military losses, allowed government forces to retake major cities like Aleppo, strengthened Assad's political survival, established permanent Russian bases in Syria. Russia presented this as fighting terrorism and protecting Syrian sovereignty. Critics argued it escalated the war and increased civilian casualties. Both are part of the truth. Russia's intervention saved Assad, and it also locked Syria deeper into conflict. For years, headlines predicted, Assad will fall any moment. Yet today he remains in power. Why? Several key reasons. External backing. Russia and Iran provided military, financial, and diplomatic lifelines. Divided opposition. Rebel factions fought each other as well as the regime. War exhaustion. Some civilians preferred harsh stability over endless chaos. International fear of vacuum. After the collapse of Libya and rise of ISIS, many governments feared total state collapse in Syria. Assad did not win because the war disappeared. He survived because the war reshaped the political map around him. Beneath all geopolitics lies the true story. Ordinary Syrians. Millions fled across borders into Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, Europe. Millions more became displaced inside their own country. Entire neighborhoods vanished beneath bombs and artillery. Children grew up beneath the sound of jets instead of school bells. Hospitals were struck. Markets hit. Cultural heritage sites destroyed. Syria was not destroyed by only the USA or Russia. It was destroyed by a tragedy made from many hands. The regime's brutal response. Extremist groups. Regional rivalries. Global power competition. And the cold logic of war. The result was the same, human suffering on an enormous scale. Beyond bombs, another battle was fought with banks, currency, and trade. US and European sanctions targeted Syrian officials, institutions, and later entire sectors of the economy. Supporters say sanctions pressured the regime and limited its resources. Critics say sanctions also harmed civilians, increasing poverty and restricting access to medicine and rebuilding. Meanwhile, warlords, militia leaders, and smugglers profited. The economy collapsed, not just from sanctions but from corruption, destruction of infrastructure, and mass displacement. In the Syrian conflict, truth itself became a battlefield. Governments, opposition media, extremist propaganda, foreign intelligence services, and online activists all produced narratives. Some stories exaggerated. Some denied real atrocities. Some mixed truth and fiction. Social media accelerated polarization. The world did not see Syria. It saw competing versions of Syria. Today, the map of Syria is divided. Government controls major cities and western regions. Kurdish-led administration governs parts of the northeast with U.S. military presence nearby. Rebel groups hold pockets in the northwest influenced by Turkey. Assad remains in power but presides over a broken state. Rebuilding is slow. Refugees remain abroad. Many families are still searching for the missing. The war has faded from headlines but not from lives. So, did the United States and Russia destroy Syria? The honest answer is complex. Russia directly intervened to keep Assad in power, using air power that devastated opposition-held cities. The United States intervened primarily against ISIS, supported selected rebels, and imposed sanctions that reshaped the economy and territory. But beyond them were Iran and Hezbollah, Turkey, Gulf states, local militias, extremist factions, and above all, decisions made by Syrian leadership itself, especially the early choice to crush dissent with force. Syria was not destroyed by a single country. It was destroyed by war. Itself, a war made possible by many actors, inside and outside the country. The story of Syria is not only about geopolitics. It is about how quickly a country can fall from imperfect stability into unimaginable catastrophe. It is about how the ambitions of powerful states, foreign and domestic, can turn cities into battlegrounds. It is about how easy it is to start a war, and how hard it is to end one. The final question is not who won. In war like Syria, no one truly wins. The real question is, will the world learn from Syria? And will Syrians ever again be known not as refugees or victims, but simply as people living normal lives in their own homes, fade out.